listening to the Autry Show on the best talk in town. Talk Radio 1550 KXEX. Call Alan now, 559-899-1550.
And welcome to Alan Autry No Retreat. I'm Alan Autry, and I'm so honored and humble, as always, to have you with us today. And it would be tempting to start the show off to talk about everything going on over in the Ukraine and the perilous consequences that could follow Vladimir Putin's invasion, the threat to democracy, the threat to the United States. But I'm not taking the bait. Jose, listeners, I'm more disciplined than that. I'm more patriotic than that. I love this country more than that. I believe in protecting democracy more than that. All the other radio stations, TV programs, talk shows can go over there. But I, like Kamala Harris, Joe Biden, our Secretary of Defense, Lloyd Austin, our Joint Chief of Staff leader, Mark Milley, Secretary of State Anthony Blinken, they know what the biggest threat, and we can't take our eye off that ball. So you're not going to have me open this show talking about the greatest threat being Vladimir Putin and his insatiable appetite to take over all of Europe. We know what the real threat to democracy is, Joe, and that is white supremacy. So, we're going to talk about, as soon as I get my tongue extracted from my cheek here, you know, is all of this foolishness that Americans leaders have been occupied with, in particular the left, I would say primarily, totally the left, in terms of white supremacy, the systemic racism, the focus on this fanatical focus on climate change as the existential threats to American democracy, and extrapolated to a threat to world democracy. It's part of what emboldened Putin to do what he did. Would he have done it otherwise? The man's a very calculating individual. He's been around. He understands a basic military premise. You strike your enemy at their weakest point and at the most advantageous point for you as the invading or army, military presence. So, yeah. I do put all of this focus when you have your head of your Joint Chiefs of Staff saying, I've been spending a lot of time reading about white privilege because I want to know what white privilege is so we can get them out of the military. Lloyd Austin saying we're going to stand down. We're not even going to have our military go anyplace. We're just coming to a halt while we weed out all the white supremacists. Meanwhile, Putin is strategizing his takeover of the Ukraine. This is what happens when you're weak. When, Joe Biden, and it would be anyone. I'm not just picking on Democrats. There's a lot of Republicans that played along with this year after year after year of this kind of soft approach towards a never-ending threat. And that never-ending threat, it comes from tyranny as attack on democracy. Those two systems, those two ideals have been at odds and at war pretty much since the time immemorial existed. People wanting to be free, and dictators and emperors and kings saying, no, you don't have individual rights. Whatever rights you do have, we will bestow them upon you. So this whole thing about, a kinder, gentler China, especially when you're talking about communism and you're talking about Putin, and I think Putin is a genius. He just played us like a fiddle and has for years. He played Obama like a fiddle, and he's playing chess, and Obama, otherwise intelligent individual, did not know how to play that international game, that very dangerous international game called foreign affairs, foreign policy. And he was able to Putin was able to move his knight to take out Obama's pawn, and he put Crimea in his pocket. And it wasn't really that hard. Before that, he got the best of George Bush. People don't remember that. 2008, he went into Georgia, the Georgian region, and right now he still has 30% and growing of Georgia, the sovereign country of Georgia. He outmaneuvered Bush on that. So what happened last night was predictable. You knew there was going to be a minor incursion. Now, again, I'm facetiously saying minor. It's very, very big what Putin has done with the help of his bromate. He's got a little bromance going over there with Lukashenko in Belarus. And everybody who has been following it at all, you don't have to be a foreign affairs expert to see that they're aligned at the hip. Lukashenko, the president of Belarus, Putin says jump. Lukashenko says how high. And you see him opening up the gates to the Russian tanks and probably some Belarusian tanks as well, going into the western part of Ukraine. And so this invasion, this first step invasion has happened. I still stand by my position that there won't be tanks blazing, guns firing going into Kiev. My hunch on all of this, and it goes back to the meeting prior to the Olympics that Putin and Xi Jinping had. Very important meeting, so telling. They didn't play their cards really close to the vest in this sense. They do that a lot. They're very murky. They'll say one thing, do another, but you very seldom when they meet come out with a real tangible statement of of any kind. It's just more like détente when these leaders get together. Ping and Biden, Putin, Ping, Putin, Biden as well. But this one came out, they said something very, very telling, and it was shocking to me. It sent chills up my spine. They both appeared together after meeting together for over 3.5 hours. And that was just face to face. This meeting had been prepped. They've been talking by other communications probably for months and months and months, if not years. And it came out to announce a new era of partnership between China and Russia. And that is a very telling thing there. Russia and China to come out and say, we're partners now. Now, in order to become partners, both the partners have to put in something. Usually have something to develop a partnership. One partner has something that the other one may not have. And together, they kind of merge with the things that are needed that one side has, the other doesn't have. And when they get together, they're much more powerful together than they ever were apart. That's kind of the premise that gave birth to NATO. But that partnership, this quote new era, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to understand that partnership, that strength that Vladimir Putin now has, China on his team, where he can go anywhere knowing he has China, the full backing of everything China has, which is enormous. I don't think the world has ever seen a country at this point that's had more influence, not only in their own country, which they control with an iron fist, but everywhere. This Belt and Road initiative that they have, where they go in, they create infrastructure in countries that can't afford it, build airports, bridges, what have you, and they build it for them, and they do it on debt, and the country can't repay the debt. China comes in and takes it over, and they own this very critical infrastructure. They pay off politicians. They silence any critics internally, for sure. Peng Shui, Jack Ma come to mind, silenced. They come out and criticize the government or get out of line a little bit. They disappear for several months, and they come back, and they're like these robots, Stepford people, repeating Communist Party lines. And but they here in America, you see what they did to the movie industry. They went after the sports industry. They own the NBA. They own the NFL, actually. Whatever China says, China gets. Hollywood, very influential in the movies. People don't read books anymore. They see the movie. They don't read Treasure Island anymore. No, they're going to wait for the movie to come out. and China completely controls the political rhetoric of actors. Remember Richard Gere? Remember how popular Richard Gere is? He's nowhere to be found anymore. You know why? Because he supported some freedom in Tibet. Remember when the Dalai Lama was the darling of Hollywood? The liberal left, they love the Dalai Lama. Man of peace out of Tibet, fighting for the cause and speaking out for the people who couldn't speak for themselves in Tibet. When's the last time you've seen the Dalai Lama anyplace? At any guest, speaking at any organization, anywhere in America, in corporate America, academia, Hollywood, used to be everywhere. He's gone now because China says, nope, we're canceling it. And if you cozy up to the Dalai Lama, you're done. And Richard Gere cozied up, he's done. So now no studio movie will you see Richard Gere in it because of that very reason. A very fine actor. And that's how important China is now to Russia. They have all of that power. Reminded me of, I got bullied when I was about 7th, 8th grade. Big guy, man. He was in 8th grade, but he's like 16 years old. Flunked a few years, but he just took a disliking to me. And man, I was afraid of the guy. He's huge. Popped me upside the head one time, and boy, I was, a puppy dog, man. And it was tough. I hated to go to school, but I managed to do it. And we would have, there'd be little events around the town, big softball games. The adult softball league was a big thing. Not much to do in Riverdale. Town of 2,200 people. But it was fun going there, but I was scared to see him there. I'd cower, he'd fall. He knew he had the best of me. But then my big cousin, Mike Ray, moved to Riverdale. And Mike, I was his cousin. And we got to talking. He talked about this guy. I told him about this guy. He says, well, where is he? So we went to the softball game, and there he was. He says, let's go up talk to him. I go, okay. I go up there, and there's the guy. He's looking at me, and he looked at my cousin, a whole different guy. And my cousin Mike goes, hey, I hear you've been beating up on my cousin here. No, don't do it anymore. You do it anymore, I'm going to beat the crap out of you. So last I had to, that's all I got. I got my cousin Mike. Well, that's Xi Jinping. He got down to, Vladimir Putin. He's got his big cousin Xi Jinping now. And that's why these so-called sanctions, first of all, you got to go back, and I'm not going to put this at just on the shoulders of Joe Biden, Barack Obama, and the entire government that has just run in fear of the Chinese government and then made the unthinkable decision to outsource everything we really need as a society to keep going materially to China. I mean, it wasn't just Democrats. It wasn't just Joe Biden. There's a lot of Republicans in there that saw fit to allow companies to give China production of 92% of our antibiotics. Our actual physical health we gave to China to control. And how idiotic, how deadly, how stupid. And that wasn't just Biden. Nobody stood up and said, hey, we're getting in a little too deep. These guys are auto parts, everything we need to keep going in terms of everyday life seems to come out of China. Now we're giving them antibiotics, things that we need in our health care, our solar panels. They're all made over there. And that's another subject we're going to hit because this whole Green New Deal thing and moving so fast on it has a lot to do with why we have that situation in Ukraine as well. So I'm putting it on a lot of folks out there that let this go on, to let China grow into the monster. We fed that monster by giving them all of our manufacturing. When Bill Clinton said up there, these jobs are going and they're never coming back, meaning any job where you work with your hands, any manufacturing job, anything to do with creating things we really need. If you can't come up with the 5th generation of computer, there's no work for you. There's no place to work here in the United States of America. We put everything in the high-tech basket. That was a wrong decision. It's a dangerous decision, and we're seeing the results of it now. We created a absolute evil superpower out of China now who's partnering with Russia. And it's a very, very scary thought of these two superpowers coming together and saying, okay, and we're going to, Russia has something that may seem, if you listen to the media here in America, you think Russia has nothing that China needs. No. They have something that China desperately wants. And it's obvious that Putin and Russia have been willing and have made that decision to share that, what they have with China. We'll talk about that in a moment as well. But before we go to break, and we're supposed to have Eric Rosales calling in from our correspondent in Washington, D.C. He's with the Catholic Network, does a great job there, and he calls us from time to time, and we get some fresh on the spot, on the ground from Washington news. But I tell you, this situation also was, as I said, a long time this sausage was being made to be where we are today. But Angela Merkel, former Chancellor of Germany, has as much to do with this as Joe Biden. And probably because this whole thing is in her backyard, she probably carries even more of a responsibility. And therefore, so do all these other European countries that the woke left looks up to. Let's be more like Europe. Oh, if we were just more like Europe, are you freaking crazy? Look at those countries. Go over there and say, we want to be like Europe. Europe's totally dysfunctional. They think you can get up, cradle to grave, don't ever have to work, retire at 50, and let other people take care of you. That system doesn't work. Climate change, Merkel, okay, let's run everything on solar. Well, you know what? Those tanks rolling into Ukraine are not run on solar. They're not running on wind. They're not running on geothermal. They're running on oil, gas. And they're going to continue to do so for the foreseeable future. And you have Angela Merkel shutting down all the nuclear plants, all the coal plants, as if suddenly she can run a whole country on, like I said, on solar and wind. And then what happens? You realize your economy is starting to fall apart everywhere because it takes fossil fuels and oils to make everything. Plastics, pretty much everything you have in your home right now has some kind of petroleum in it. Not just to put in your tank of your car, which is important too for transportation, but it's in everything. And then what happens? Well, she realizes, or they realize, the German parliament realizes, we've moved way too fast on this. We gotta get some petroleum coming into this country, because our economy, which was the standard of the world, people looked at Germany going, that's the way to do it. And we're falling like a free fall. We're falling faster than Joe Biden's approval ratings. And what's she do? She has to make a deal with the devil, Putin, on this Nord Stream 2 pipeline, and to pump gas in there and looking for oil. And she looks to the United States, because we were an exporter when Trump was in office. She looks to the United States. Sorry, we've shut down Keystone. We've shut down drilling on federal lands. We shut down. We're not going to go Anwar. We barely have enough oil for ourselves. So some things are exposed. I think this is kind of like the COVID thing, Jose. As horrible as it is, and man, it's been horrible for 2 years. There's some things that have been made aware. We would have never known what they were teaching in school. But the CRT was in there. We wouldn't have known how controlling politicians can be. What was truly in their hearts was not to serve you. It was to control you and me. That's obvious on a lot of fronts. There's some outliers. Ron DeSantis in Florida. You had Kristi Noem, South Dakota. There were some governors that stood tall. Abbott there in Texas. But we got an insight into the real hearts and minds of most of the politicians that were controlling us, from the governorships and the mayor's offices around the country. So I'm hoping and praying, and I do believe so, that this crisis that we're in right now, and I think it's going to settle in, and on coming shows, we're going to talk about that. What's the scenario from here? There is going to be a new normal, obviously, in Western and Eastern Europe, but just maybe this has awakened not just America, that you just can't, you can't have peace through weakness. You have to have peace through strength. You get war through weakness. And that's what we're seeing right now. That there will be some changes made, some awareness created, some epiphanies that occur in some decision makers. And hopefully, I think there's a chance. You know, I'm an eternal optimist. Why? Because I made a living in Hollywood for 35 years with this face. I have to be. I've always been an eternal optimist, or I wouldn't have gone anywhere in life. I do believe there's a chance to bring these parties, these desperate parties, Democrat and Republican together, not the far fringe. You're never going to get the far right on the Republican side. You're never, on the left, you're never going to get those, the AOCs and those folks. You're never going to get them. But I'm talking about really common sense people that realize we're in a real watershed moment in the history of our country and the world, that we have to come together, stop being triggered by one comment, stop these senseless name calling, stop saying that the most important thing in this country and the biggest threat to our country internally is white supremacists and a couple of hillbillies up in Appalachia, you know, hatching a plan to take over the Capitol. You know, that kind of nonsense, I think, this incident in the Ukraine and what's happening there, we have a chance to just knock that out of our heads and come to our senses as a country. I'm hopeful. I'm praying. We'll see what happens. All right, we're going to take a quick break. Oh, man, 12:29. Man, I can yap when I get going here. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, hopefully we'll have Eric Rosales on the line, and he'll direct from Washington what's going on in the minds of the folks we elected to represent us. What do they think about what's going over there in the Ukraine, and what are they going to do about it? This is Alan Autry, No Retreat. We'll be right back. Only if she gets 3 hours of sleep.
Yeah, I'll wait for Eric, and if Laura calls again,
Sounds good. Folks, this
hey, I have some B-roll going, you know, on the broadcast from all the stuff happening over there.
Okay. Oh, do you have it ready? You mean being able to play it, you think? What? Yeah, my belief, I think this is so, you know, you see the media jumping all over Trump, jumping all over people that say that Putin's a genius, he's a tactician. Look, and that doesn't mean we support what he's doing. I mean, let me tell you, it didn't do Eisenhower any good to come in and say, oh, Hitler doesn't know what he's doing. Hitler's great. He doesn't know what he's doing. No, he would say about Hitler, he's a brilliant tactician. He made some mistakes, but he was brilliant. He didn't mean he was for the Nazis. He acknowledged the talents of his opponent. Dadgum. I mean, it makes no sense. I mean, you just got to know who you're dealing with. You just can't call them names and they'll go away. That's just childish. You have to understand, you know, what's the book? The Art of War talks about that a lot.
Hey, Alan?
Can you know your enemy? You got to know them, and you got to appreciate what they do. I mean, you agree with it. By appreciate, I mean going, you thought that out. We got to be smarter than you. Yeah. On the drive over here to the studio, I'm saying, you know, they haven't said anything. which doesn't surprise me.
Oh, yes,
but
they have.
Okay, you said they have. Go ahead. What'd they say?
Okay, this is from Horizon News Outlet, who accidentally also posted their editorial instructions on how to cover Ukraine-Russia issue on its Weibo page. Okay, so they said that they were not to put anything not positive towards Russia or anything positive about the West. That was banned. Okay, here we go. This is from the Ministry of Defense. China must back Russia with emotional, financial, and moral support while attempting to refrain from treading on the toes of the U.S. and EU. In the future, China will require Russia's understanding and support when confronting America to resolve the Taiwan issue once and for all. Therefore, with regard to the Ukraine crisis, China must understand Russia's legitimate concerns and defend the Russian position.
That's exactly what I thought was going on. There's no doubt. It doesn't. You don't have to be Anthony Blinken. Thank God we're not. God, geez. You got to get some competent people in around Joe Biden, because anybody who follows it has common sense, because they have a lot of common sense, Laura. I'm not saying it's not evil, but they have a lot of. They're not sitting around talking about systemic racism in Russia or China. They're thinking, how do we step by step control the world?
Mm-hmm.
This
is for us. This is a tipping point, and it has to be a tipping point.
I agree.
And I don't mean with our politicians and all of us beginning to unify behind the idea. I would really like these far left loonies to have to go and live, say, maybe in Afghanistan for a week, and then they can understand what real oppression is.
Exactly. Exactly.
Nobody that was born in this country needs to say a word about oppression, because they have no clue.
Unbelievable. Well, thank you for that. I was thinking about that. We must have been on the same wavelengths if China said anything. We're getting ready to go back on radio, Laura. Thank you so much for that. I'm going to try to paraphrase what you said a little bit for the audience when we come back on the radio. Thank you, dear.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
30 seconds.
And that was before the invasion?
Thank you so much. Eric is on, and we're about to start.
All righty.
You're listening to the Alan Autry Show on the best talk in town. Talk Radio 1550 KXEX. Call Alan now, 559-899-1550.
And welcome back to Alan Autry No Retreat. We're going to talk to Eric Rosales in about 30 seconds, but I got a call from Laura Fisher, who's been just a loyal follower of the show and been just so helpful with some great information. She's a great researcher of issues of every kind, but particularly focused on issues of foreign policy. And she just called and said, and I'm paraphrasing a little bit, that China did issue a release. I don't know if you said it was like 3 hours before the invasion? By 3 hours before the invasion, that basically they weren't taking any sides, but they give full financial support and backing to Russia, as long as you don't step on the toes of the United States too much. I won't go on the mismatch. I'll have her send it to me and I'll read it verbatim. But basically, they came out and supported Russia and gave took out any ambiguity about what they're willing to do economically. So these sanctions say that Biden's slapping on Russia as if they're going to hurt Russia. No, China will pick up the slack. They'll pay whatever damage is done to the Russian economy. They will pick up. And let me tell you, to have China's influence right now in Europe trumps the United States influence, pure and simple. It is sadly what it is at this point in time, and probably the reason that Putin took this time and moment in history and all the stars aligned for him to do what he's doing right now. So let's go to Eric Rosales. Eric, are you there, buddy?
I am here. How you doing there?
Well, I'm doing better than I deserve, my brother. It's how are things in Washington D.C. with everything going on? Is it people are moving around? Are they frantic? Is there a sense of urgency, or what's the tone there?
There is definitely a sense of urgency, and with President Joe Biden announcing a wide range of sanctions against Putin, and but what's interesting when you actually take a look at that, he is freezing the assets of key financial institutions, cutting off access to advanced technology, technology that is, and punishing the Russian oligarchs that are here in the United States. It's interesting that he stopped short of several key measures. When you talk about the sanctioning Putin himself personally, none of that is taking place, and also calling on Russia to be removed from the SWIFT banking system, and also cutting off from the world energy market. It's very interesting up here on Capitol Hill. Congress is beginning to rally around removing Russia from SWIFT system, although it's a step that would require a buy-in from the rest of the world and the financial community. So it's very interesting. You have to take a look at these sanctions. Do they go far enough? Many of the Republicans up here on Capitol Hill say that, and Democrats as well, they say it's little too late. They really wanted these sanctions to go in before, just for the fact that Putin had been behind all of the cyber security threats that were taking place against the Ukraine government months ago, that were taking place, and also the infiltration of the government there in Ukraine. But yeah, these sanctions, when you look at it, they're really going after the billionaires and the hundreds of families here and throughout the country of the United States that are here, that are basically, Biden thinks is trying to help the Russian government.
Yeah, but there's no set adage, Eric. The truth will set you free, but first it'll make you miserable. And the miserable truth is, these sanctions are going to do nothing but hurt the American people in Europe. You talk about going far enough. America, our leaders are still in this fantasy world that Putin was in for a while, that the old Soviet Union still exists, that they had the juice around the country. Well, when the Berlin Wall came down, when Reagan busted them economically, they didn't have that juice anymore. America does not have the juice anymore to go far enough with sanctions, because that worked when America was the only big financial superpower in the world. They called the shots. But now with China, you have China on the thing, and when China decides the sanctions have gone far enough, and they tell all these financial institutions, we're pulling our stuff out unless you take those sanctions off, they're just going to defy the sanctions. They're not going to follow them. By the way, these sanctions take sometimes a year, 2 years, 3 years to even put in place. There's nothing immediate. There's nothing immediate, Eric, going on here. So sometimes the situation, you look around, this happens, you don't like it, you want to do something about it, you realize they have guns, you got pea shooters, and you say, well, okay, we can go at them with our 1,000 pea shooters and just get mowed down. And it's very difficult for politicians, and especially countries like us that have been used to calling the shots, to simply say, we can't do anything. The best thing you could do is do nothing, because you slap these sanctions on Russia with their oil, they're just going to raise the price. We will to send checks to everybody to cover the $9 of gasoline, a gallon of gasoline. So what's your thoughts about it? I just don't see where it hurts anybody. It's not going to hurt them with sanctions.
No, these sanctions are going to hurt no one except Americans. And let me tell you this, I mean, when you look at the trade alone with China for Russia, I'm talking about Russia's trade with China, $140 billion. That's 7 times more than Russia's trade with the United States.
Wow.
When you take a look at Russia's trade with entire Europe, $200 billion. And you take a look at this pipeline, the Nord Stream 1. The Nord Stream 1 is still functioning right now.
Sure.
So Russia is still getting money all throughout European and the world for their oil. So he doesn't want to witness the collapse of Russia, because when you have that, I mean, they're sitting on 6,300 nuclear warheads with vehicles and being able to launch them wherever they want to. So, and also I've been in touch with many of my sources back in the State Department and also the Defense Department during the Trump administration, and they're telling me that when Ukrainians and Eastern Europeans are leaving the country, Putin is playing a very good game right now of public relations and giving them something like 10,000 to 20,000 to even 50,000 rubles when they come into Russia and they flee to Ukraine, so that it's total PR, Alan. They're going to hurt no one except the United States, and we're seeing with our energy prices right now and the price of gas.
Yeah, and the poor people, they look at it and they say, we all have to sacrifice. This is going to cost us something. No, it's not. It's not going to cost them. Those congressmen with lifelong pensions, people like Nancy Pelosi, everybody, Jim Jordan on the right. This folks aren't going to, Lindsey Graham, who supports this, what's going on there with these sanctions, they're not going to, they can afford it. They got these lush retirements and pension programs and personal assets. Talking about where's that person on a fixed income is living on Social Security that, do they have to walk to the store now every day? Maybe they can't do that.
Correct.
And then, or that handy ride that you used to get, now it's going to go up, $5, $10, $15, to pay for the fuel, and your paycheck doesn't go up. It's the middle class and the lower middle class folks economically that gets hurt. Dadgummit, that rubs me in the wrong place, especially when Eric, folks out there listening, this. These sanctions, how can we slap these sanctions? They're going to last as long until Putin says, okay, I'm going to have my cyber thugs shut down the grid in New York City. They've already tested.
I mean, 90% of our infrastructure is privately owned.
Yes.
So it's not government owned. So, and they don't have the cybersecurity advantages
of life. And you're saying that this is worth it, that by you slapping some sanctions on 5 or 6 oligarchs, and they're going to work through it anyway. It's not even going to affect them. I mean, we're going to fold like a dollar store broom as soon as he does that, because we have no choice. As soon as those cyber attacks, okay, take off the sanctions, or New York goes dark during the winter to see how many people freeze to death. And you're going to say this is Russia, and Putin's going to say, oh, we got nothing to do with it. We don't know who they are.
And my foreign affairs sources up on Capitol Hill say that Russia and Putin has been preparing for this for years. So he has
no doubt
hundreds, if not thousands of billions of dollars put away just to be able to handle this situation. That's why he is giving the rubles to those who end up fleeing Ukraine into Russia. That's why he is trying to play this whole issue with Russia appeared.
Well, it's like saying, Biden's like saying to America, okay, here's how we're going to defend democracy. We've got this tyrant invading Europe, free Europe here, if we don't stop him now. So here's what we're going to do. I want everybody to get their gun, grab their gun, point it at your head, and pull the trigger. That's how we stop democracy. It makes no sense. Let's go inflict as much pain as we can on ourselves, really nothing on the enemy, and think that somehow will deter tyranny and protect democracy. Sometimes you just got to say, we lost it, convene in Europe, have Biden convene all of Europe saying, okay, with this one, there's nothing much we can do about this. Let's get together and realize where we went wrong. How do we allow this to happen? First of all, Germany, you got an army of 64,000. That's nothing. You need to ramp it up. All of you guys. France, Italy, remilitarize. During World War II, that was what Churchill was saying. Prior to World War II, there was this whole disarmament thing after World War I. No country wanted to arm. Even the prime minister at that time of Great Britain, who'd got bombed, Dunkirk, said, no, we're just going to stay disarmed. Everybody disarmed. We don't want to see another war. And Churchill said, wait a minute, though. The dude over there, he's arming, and he has an appetite to take over the world. He was the only one. And then Neville Chamberlain comes back and saying, hey, peace in our time. And Churchill saying, that's not worth the paper it's written on. he's going to be, and that's the kind of the same thing. We have to meet power with power, military build up with military build up. And you know, it just irritates me, Eric, when I see politicians, because I got close enough to it as a mayor. Eric, you spend a lot of time around these folks, and you see these worthless little symbolic things that are done and just created to give the impression that you're doing something important when you know in your heart you're doing nothing, and then many times making the problem worse. You know? You there, brother?
Hey, it's Eric. I got disconnected.
No, okay. I'm good. I just went on a rant there. But I said, you know, the best thing Biden can do is, in all of Europe, is saying, okay, we really can't do anything meaningfully. Let's not hurt our people. Let's reconvene now and begin a new era how we confront a new aggressive Putin-Ping alliance. You can come back and begin creating policies of rebuilding the military, having all of Europe start rebuilding their militaries, and the financial systems in place there, what that looks like. Maybe you go to cryptocurrency, Bitcoin. I don't know what the solutions are. I know they're going to have to figure it out, but they can't win this one.
They definitely are.
They can't win this one. Don't beat up on the people of the free world right now on this. Just say, hey, you won this one. Now let's go make sure he doesn't come any further. What's your thoughts on that?
You know what? Well, I firmly agree. I mean, we got to take a step back and be able to figure out, because as of right now, I mean, you saw what's taking place whenever China gets out of line. We can only slap the hand of China because we literally owe so much money to China.
And you can't slap them too hard.
Owe so much money.
You can't slap them too hard on the hand either.
No, you can't.
You got to make sure it's a little love tap, you know.
Meanwhile, up here on Capitol Hill, I'm staring at a fence right now that's being installed around the Capitol again as we continue to wait for President Biden's State of the Union address. You know, it's just where's this country gone? You know, it's you got the Freedom Convoy truck protest heading to Washington D.C. ahead of the speech, and
what do you think about that?
Saw what took place in Canada.
What do you think? What do you think about that? On the show the other day, I stated that I thought an American mirror image trucking convoy of Canada would not be a good idea. If you want to see change, there's too much that could go wrong with it. You could get an incident happen, it gets covered the wrong way. I just what's your thoughts on that?
Well, I think it's pretty scary the way you know. I mean, if you take a look at our Constitution, which Canada doesn't apply, but I mean, if you take a look at our Constitution and the violations that took place within the Constitution of being able to the right to assemble in a way of being able to speak your mind and be able to go against the government. And here, banks were frozen, assets were frozen, people's trucks were apprehended, people were arrested for basically protesting in the streets. It's kind of scary the way democracy is taking a back seat to. You know, we're seeing it also with mass mandates across the country. We're seeing it with inside school board meetings. It's you know, you got to fight for our democracy, and you got to stand strong, because if we don't, then we start inching back, and we start you know, the Constitution is not a living breathing document that changes over time. It's
right.
It holds still, and we have to honor that and honor the rights of those who are wanting to protest. And you know, do I feel like that streets should be blocked off? No, I think it got out of hand. But at the same time, when you start freezing the assets of people's bank accounts and shutting down businesses that don't agree with the government, that's when it becomes pretty scary.
Right. Well, I agree with you 100% on that. Yeah, I agree with you 100% on that. Down the line, what you just said, we've talked about it on the show. My point was to have a American trucker convoy to Washington, D.C. to kind of mirror that. Number one, I don't think it's very inspired, because let Canada be that. Don't try to mirror that.
Right.
And I think you have the midterms coming up. Don't do anything to screw it up. Don't do this mass thing there and have these outsiders come in, because, you know, you can undo, you know, expect the unexpected. What does it gain right now? I mean, you go down there and you shut off the beltway for a while. Don't do that. You want to go there in mass and protest, do it that way. But I don't even think. What's your thought? We got about 2 minutes left. Strategically, I just think it doesn't feel like a really smart, good move right now. If you want to get what you want to get.
No, it's definitely not a good move, and the reason why is because, like you mentioned, it's you have the midterm elections and just around the corner, and as long as Republicans don't screw it up, you could see a major turn in the House, definitely, anywhere from, possibly 12 to even 20 seats. Right now, 26 seats or so are up for grabs. And then the Senate, well, you can actually gain control of the Senate as well. So you could have a Republican-controlled Senate and a Republican-controlled House as long as Republicans don't put their foot in their mouth and let it go the wrong way. And I really think that they should be having meetings with these trucking companies because, shutting down the Beltway, for like you mentioned, a couple of days, that's really going to send the wrong message. It's going to get people all riled up, and it's not really going to get anything done. It's not to the extent that what was taking place in Canada, where this issue took place.
I agree 100%. Things could only go wrong. You're upside if it comes across perfect and you get your moments there. You don't really push the ball down the field that much, and at the very worst, an incident happens. A knucklehead gets out of line, and then you have CNN and the rest of the mainstream media saying, January 6 2.0.
Correct.
And I just hope they call that off, or it's very limited in its scope. Eric,
back to these sanctions, we could be looking at, I would say, in California, $6 a gallon for gas. $7 a gallon, which is incredible.
That's a nice cherry note to leave you on. That's nice.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that, buddy.
No, you know why? Being facetious, I said it'd be $7 or $8. Hey, $6 doesn't sound that bad now because they're projecting 7, 8, even more in California. But maybe this will help Californians, rally and to repeal some of these worthless gas taxes. We have the highest in the nation because of these double gas tax that were supposed to fix the roads, and they went in and you don't see any road fixed. And as part of that gas tax, it was misused. So maybe something good will come out of that. But it's you start talking though that type of cost per gallon is absolutely a budget buster for many, many, many American families to have that.
Most definitely.
It just decimates a budget. So, hey, Eric, thank you so much, my brother. Oh, hey, before I let you go, how's that knee coming?
It's coming along just fine. For those that don't know, I ruptured my patella tendon falling down the stairs inside the Capitol, but after surgery, I'm healing up, and I'll be back on EWTN News Nightly very soon. So
beautiful. At least you went going down the stairs, not going like Joe up the stairs there. Hey, what you need to do is you got to go there and go to the Lincoln Monument, run up those steps like Rocky, and get to the top. Give me a little video. Just shoot those arms in there. We'll put a little Rocky music behind you, and we'll have you back in the saddle again.
Got it, sir. Take care of yourself.
Eric Rosales, love you, brother. Thank you so much for checking in. Oh, folks, thank you for being with us, man. It's just a chunk of heaven to be able to spend this hour with you. God bless you. God bless your families. God bless America. And we are not going to give up hope here. You know why? Because we're not going to retreat from doing what's right. This whole thing's going to work out. We got to make some changes, not only in, our policies here, but policies abroad. But I have confidence that's going to happen. I believe God has his hand on this country still, and I know a lot of you feel the same way. God bless you. God bless America. As I said, good Lord willing, creek don't rise, and we see you tomorrow. Bye-bye now.